I am so excited and grateful to be here with you all tonight and with our really brilliant readers, Jena Osman and Alli Warren, and our really wonderful guest introducer, Juliana Spahr. We will hear first from Jena, who will be introduced by Juliana, and then Alli will read. But before we get to that, I just have a few announcements and reminders that I want to share. Okay. So our wonderful moderator for tonight, Anna Kreinenberg, is adding to the chat now a link with some helpful Zoom tips and other best practices. I do just want to note that we are recording tonight's event. You're totally welcome to have your cameras on or off as you prefer, but just to keep in mind that if your camera's on, your little square might find its way into event documentation. I also want to point out that you can access a live transcript of tonight's event by clicking on that little live on custom live streaming service button in the top left corner, and you can select view stream, and it will open up the transcript stream in another browser window. If at any point tonight you have any Zoom difficulties or questions, feel free to chat anybody using the chat function at the bottom who has staff after their name, and we'll be really happy to help you out. Anna is now going to add to the chat another link, which is to our statement of safer spaces, which I invite you all to have a look at. I think it's really important to note that whether the space we share is virtual or physical, our commitment to resisting hierarchies and harm and other ongoing systems of oppression is consistent. And we're really grateful to you all for joining us in that work. Under other circumstances, we would be gathered together now in St. Mark's Church in the Bowery, in a church built over the site where Peter Stuyvesant built his family chapel in 1660. Peter Stuyvesant enslaved 40 people, and in his time as Director General of New Netherland, increased the population of enslaved Africans in the colony, whose stolen lives and labor were used to construct the buildings and streets on this stolen land. St. Mark's Church is located on the unceded homeland of the Lenape people, Lenape-Hoking. I am speaking to you tonight from what is called Sunset Park in Brooklyn, which is the unceded homeland of the Canarsie, a Munsee-speaking band of Lenape people. A neighborhood whose waterfront was redlined in the 1930s, a waterfront that is now the site of Municipal Detention Center, a federal prison where 1,600 people are currently experiencing incarceration. Anna is adding to the chat now a map, not to endorse it as complete, but to invite you all to learn continually about the land you occupy, its history and ties. As we gather across various neighborhoods and states, it gives me occasion to remember that it's not just some of the land that was stolen or some of the land that needs to be returned, but all of it. It reminds me too that to return the land is not a matter of transferring capitalist ownership, but as many Indigenous thinkers have explained, a radical rethinking of belonging and ownership, centering Indigenous autonomy and active relationality and responsibility. To reiterate Gloria Anzaldua's assertion, this land was Lenape-Hoking always, and is, and will be again. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. And now it's my total honor and joy to turn it over to Juliana Spahr to introduce Jena Osman.
Hi, thanks. I was trying to think about what I wanted to say tonight. I've known Jena for so many years, and she just reminded me that it might be as many as 30 years. And sometimes it can be really hard to explain how crucial someone's thinking is when it's been such a big part of one's own thinking for so long. So I have this memory of meeting Jena a million years ago, and what I mainly remember from that meeting is her confidence, plus that she had on a really cool t-shirt. And then a few years later, we were editing Chain, a thing we did together for 12 years. And during those 12 years, we were in almost daily conversation about poetry. And it was as if I was enrolled in the school of Jena. She taught me a lot about how to read poetry during these years, how to read words on the pages, not the name at the top of the page, how to have fealty to the poem and to the idea. Jena has always been someone who values work that's idiosyncratic, that ignores the latest trends, that is full of atypical thinking. And that would also be how I would describe her own work. She will turn to history, but not to write a history, but to write an anecdote. And then she will turn to physics to tell us something about the light that shines inside the anecdote. Then there might be a bear or an owl in that light. And suddenly there is a poem that has found its cadence in the juxtaposition between ideas. And what the poem has to tell us breaks our head open in the best Dickinsonian sense. And out of that explosion, an automaton emerges, one that is made of wire and wheels. And the explosion, it turns out, has set this machine spinning or lurching, and that motion is uncannily human and thus full of what matters. Please welcome Jena Osman and listen.
Hi. Thank you so much, Juliana. Your work always makes me think harder and makes me consider difficult questions. And I'm just so grateful that I've been in conversation with you for so many years. So thank you for the introduction. I also want to thank the Poetry Project for inviting me to be here, and I want to thank all of you for your good company tonight. I want to acknowledge that I'm Zooming from Philadelphia, which is also on the ancestral land of the Lenape people, whose presence in the region continues to this day, and their place names, versions of them, permeate the city here. Aramingo, Conshohocken, Moyamensing, Neshaminy, Manayunk, Pennypack, Wissahickon, and many, many others. Today, I am going to read from Motion Studies, and I started this book a really long time ago, and I'm not so sure how it resonates with the moment that we're in now, which is so specific and so intense in so many ways. On the one hand, the book is about experiments, the experiments of the 19th century physiologist Etienne Jules Murray. He was concerned with figuring out how to make the invisible visible so that it could be read and measured. And that does feel relevant, like maybe if virus particles were visible, we could better understand their transmission. But on the other hand, this poem, Motion Studies, is an argument against data mining and the kind of surveillance required for something like contact tracing. There's a fictional couple in the poem who are trying to get entirely off the grid. So I'm gonna read some sections and scenes, and I have to admit that I find this book really hard to excerpt. There are a lot of intertwining threads, so I hope you can hang on and ride the wave of it. Okay. The 19th century physiologist Etienne Jules Murray saw the body as a machine and wanted to understand its mechanics. He created a number of ingenious instruments in order to understand the rules of motion. His first well-known device, invented in 1859, was a graphing tool called a sphygmograph, which measured the rhythms of the blood as it moved through to the heart. An improvement on prototypes recently constructed in Germany, Murray's version was lighter, portable, and most significantly, created a readable output. They had struck gold. They'd won the right to be forgotten. The ticket granted them that. All they had to do was sign on the dotted line and then disappear into the sunset, onto the horizon, around the corner, into the mist, over the rainbow, into complete silence. But for their breath, the noise of her pulse, of his, the hellish tattoo of the heart recorded in a line. They draw a breath and it's made visible. They have a thought and that's visible as well. shallow breath and stealth, holding breath, to ward off the tracker, to escape the censor, the reader. Ankle bracelets were first used by the United States criminal justice system in 1983, assigned primarily to wealthy offenders as a prison alternative at the start. They are now frequently required as part of parole agreements for juvenile truants and for immigrants waiting for their asylum cases or deportation hearings to begin. Not an alternative, but an extension and expansion. The monitoring device consists of a black plastic bracelet and an electronic box that's linked to the phone line 24 hours a day. Some work via radio frequency and some track location via global positioning. You are free to move about the building while a constellation of satellites tracked by the Air Force tunes into your frequencies. You are free to move outside the building to a pre-approved list of sites, denied the chance encounter, the yard sale, the conversation on the street with a neighbor. The police and/or the probation officer hold the registering instrument and collect the signals. When the signal is broken, they move in and make an arrest, not for a crime that endangers public safety, but for breaking the rules of the device. The suspicious computer and voice imprint, continuous receiving centers demand the best from your house arrest. The companies that lease the equipment often charge a fee. A prisoner may owe thousands for the equipment needed to continue their home detention. A leash instead of a cage, a tether, a homing device, an open air prison. Absolute location is the world moving around you. A body with a monitor enters a store. Another body with a monitor enters the same store. Is trouble brewing, or do they both need to buy toothpaste? Can the device interpret the world? All he can hear is an engine, and then the engine stops, and then they are lifted from an interior to an exterior. And then the engine starts again without them. And then it is silent. He waits a long time. If he moves, if he lifts the black sheet and they aren't alone, his presence will be given away. He can still feel her heart beating against his, but slower, in a deep sleep. He wishes he could move through her, but he is only a transparent skin. Eventually, she twitches awake, unharmed. She throws the sheet and him off. He quickly looks around. Lush grape arbors, rolling hills, not much else. Have they made it to new wilderness? She looks down at her wrist and sees that the inflammation is gone. Her body feels sore. She thought she had died. There's a moment of wonder and relief. But something is wrong. When they turn away from each other's eyes to the place that they're in, the arbor has become a barren tract of lines and objects, abandoned engineering projects, pipes, a culvert. Then the world begins to erase itself, then redraws back to the wild, only to disperse and decay again. They hold on to each other as if the earth might crack open, but nothing rumbles, nothing shakes. Just the smooth glide and reshuffle of competing landscapes. The barren tract erases, redraws, becomes the new wilderness. Then the ghost of the former grows and embeds in the new. Then the new leaves its residue in the former, grapes scattered across a plot of dirt. Is this a glitch? Ghost Catching was a 1999 collaboration between dancer and choreographer Bill T. Jones and digital artist Shelley Eshkar and Paul Kaiser. Jones, with sensors attached to his joints and limbs, improvised before the cameras. Software tracked and captured his movements, his self reduced to dots. His body spun and lost its mass, its identity. A human animation tool took the skeleton of Jones's movement and mapped it onto a kinematic biped, a three-dimensional figure that looked hand-drawn. A computer modeled applied geometry. For a time, the figure is contained within a sketched box, struggles to move inside of it, but ultimately breaks free. A captured movement trying to escape its capture. Each gesture leaves a mark, a chalk line, until the entire world of the piece is filled with the inscription of motion's residue. The sound of chalk drawn on a blackboard, position, rotation, a body draws a line in space, now a visible trace. The visible trace draws itself another body, a half-life of lines and planes and curves. Reading the heart is a matter of understanding the variation of curves, captured, then breaking free again and again. With motion capture, no one is there, but there's someone there. The ghost of each movement continuing as a visible chalked trace, the chalky streaked air. In analyzing pure motion, the body is lost. Yet, as Jones himself once stated, motion capture may be the best way to archive his life's work. At this moment, when flight preoccupies so many researchers, there's the need to understand the behavior of air. So wrote Murray, explaining the logic behind his aerodynamics experiments at the start of the 20th century. Now it's the bird as detective framed for a future crime. The bird scrubs the image, looking for clues as to where the murder is going to happen. Driver's licenses, the address label on a newspaper, the vectors from shadows. There's a tall tree ahead that appears stable in both versions of the world, the lush and the barren, so they move toward it carefully. With each sliding cycle, the differences become more extreme. Now the vineyards burst with purple grapes on sunny slopes. A god appears in robes of royal purple. Then a non-landscape, a meteor impact site, the scabby earth. Now the wine flows, the nymphs play with tigers and leopards. Then the parched soil, a seam of ore, the fossilized bodies post-carnage. Now a sea of sprouted vines grab and grow as if their legs were arbors. Then the scrubby trees brush, the scorched grass burns, the barbed wire fences scrape. Now the blood red wine, the roaring tigers, flutes and tambourines. Then the stony grassland, the strewn viscera, the cyanide-crusted turf. Now a golden throne, a ball of thread. Then a sinkhole, an abandoned mine. From the height of the tree, they think they see a fault line in the distance, the point where the flux of the two worlds stabilizes. Murray's last invention was a smoke machine. An electric fan at the base of the box drew the smoke down in thin streams against a black velvet background. The apparatus allowed Murray to track and record the path of air as it flowed around static objects. Though the objects he used were small, capsule shapes, blades of mica, they were analogies for the wing shapes of airplanes. A federal investigator has come to observe operations. He offers the bird a stick of gum. As the smoke trails made contact with various shapes, they would change course. They wandered, they eddied. Different shapes caused different amounts of drag, made evident by a confusion of smoke, signaling degree of resistance. The shape of the wing defined its conversation with the air. When the confrontation between air and object was lit by the explosion of a magnesium flash, an instant photograph would capture the smoke trails in the acts of deflection and flow. The bird brags to the observer from Justice. Once the amendment passes, we go national. There's going to be nowhere to run. The bird's boss is on the line and warns that this is no time for a mistake. The nation votes this week. Don't worry, says the bird. From the height of the tree, they see the radial lines and patterns of outcrop flipping over like waves. In the distance, the fault line is a slender joint of static ground inside the tumult. There is something teeming, a mass migration, on this long seam of earth. At regular intervals, there is an obstacle, a mountain, a rock. The road splits and the swarm divides around the obstruction and reunites on the other side. It's a beautiful pattern with a deadly tail. The end of the seam follows them, transforming land into a cliff abyss. Bodies fall off into the instability. They do not want to join the swarm. They came all this distance in order to escape the horde, plus the gamble of the cliff abyss, but their current position isn't viable. With each transformation of the environment, the tree gets older. Its leaves are falling. Small branches are breaking off. It's hollowing out. The surrounding ground in transition is getting wilder and wilder. They run for the middle of the fault line swarm, or rather, they stutter run in a stop and start of balance, then sprint. They reach the seam. Murray spent his life's work trying to make the invisible visible. It's a beautifully simple mission. Hito Sterl's mock instructional video, How Not to Be Seen, updates and complicates that goal within a 21st century context. The computer voice declares, most important things want to remain invisible. Love is invisible. War is invisible. Capital is invisible. For those with privilege, a desired low-profile resolution can be purchased and guaranteed thanks to gated communities, anti-facial recognition makeup and clothing, or being able to pay someone to scrub your digital presence. For those without such privilege, the disappeared, the poor, the targets of drone strikes, low resolution is a kind of curse. And then there are the undocumented, the exploited laborers who invisibly work behind national scenes, trying to keep their resolution as low as possible so as not to be caught in the net of deportation. The video instructs, to become invisible, one has to become smaller or equal to 1 pixel. In other words, one has to become or be perceived as a disembodied and unvoiced phenomenon, thin air. You ever get any false positives? The observer from Justice asks. The bird is annoyed at the question. As they march, they observe the natural world around them. The stone capsules and cliffs of mica are proliferating and changing. Their smooth surfaces bloom with nubby biometric shrubs. As they march with the migrating swarm, new shapes rise up and force them apart. He signals for her not to touch them, as they are collectors and recorders of accidental contact. Some of the shrubs are covered in beautiful flowers that click with shutters and shots. Someone just ahead of her brushes against a smooth side of mica and it slices a specimen of skin like glass. A stone formation releases radio waves over each body that passes, reflecting its energy back as a 3-dimensional image in the cloudless sky. The environment reads, tests, and measures. Murray was an early data miner. In 1884, he interrupted his experiments with chronophotography in order to help track the source of a cholera outbreak in Paris. From his hometown of Beaune, he sat down with doctors' records of fatalities and laid them on top of maps of Parisian waterways, the streams and canals and sewers. The cartographic layering revealed a singular pattern of coincidence that made the source of the problem, which was fecal contamination of water, apparent. The sentry warns the bird, "Careful, chief, you dig up the past, all you get is dirty." Each move we make creates a line drawn, a filament of smoke. Addresses, driving records, voter registration, credit card purchases, bank card transactions, healthcare records, web browsing histories, social media posts. The aspiration for the data mined profile is a mirror image of the subject through smoke, to pass the test, to be a real human. The reality is more like an error-prone doppelganger made of bits and pieces. You'll never meet your data double. It's proprietary, but it will follow you for all of your life. Corporations will flirt with your double and buy at dinner in the hopes of getting to know you and what you might buy, what you might watch, whom you might vote for, what health procedures or prescriptions you might pursue. They will seduce your double so as to determine a price, deny you a loan or a service, limit your job opportunities, or give you a longer jail sentence. Your double eagerly tells wacky half-truths about you to whomever will buy it a drink. It's a blabbermouth. The bird reports his findings to his boss, who says, "Remember, the eyes of the nation are on us right now." When they see the books, the cargo, they must make a choice. They shuffle to the perimeter of the bottleneck, to the very edge of the pavement. To either side of the road, the earth continues to roil in violent whirlpools, drawing the debris of the world down into their deep eyes. Every so often, the whirlpools transform into flat, calm seas or idyllic green pastures, only to collapse like crumpled paper thrown into a bottomless vortex. The road continues to convey forward with its deadly drop-off tail at the back. They begin to understand that the bottleneck is not so much due to congestion as it is to hesitation and then a small group of resistors. The resistance strategy is simple: slow down. There's a thin red thread unraveling from hand to hand. If they hold on to it, they can hold themselves back. They do this knowing that eventually the end of the road will catch up with them. This is the first time they've talked since the device was implanted in her wrist. The red thread makes them think of Ariadne's thread, how it showed the way out of the labyrinth. They talk about how Dionysus took Ariadne from Theseus, and when she died, he put her image in the sky. They talk about how seeing constellations requires connecting the points with an invisible narrative thread. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jena. That reading was so brilliant, and I truly love this book so much. I'm really curious to hear you wonder how it might respond to this particular moment, because in my experience of it, its responses are vast and profound, and I've turned to it many times over the last 6 months. It's really a gift. We'll put a link in the chat to get a copy for anyone who hasn't already. Highly recommend. Thank you, Jena. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce Alli Warren. Alli Warren's newest book, Little Hill, is at times something like a list of demands in an ongoing and unequal negotiation with forces that feign immovable. At other times, it's a list of desires, as one might mouth the desires in the dark of night or in the afternoon's rush. Here are some things these poems want. Quote, to say the glass does not shatter, it unfurls. Quote, I want to tongue the word abolition. I want to learn the lessons of worship from nature. No locks and no clocks is the way I want it. Quote, the thing I want most, a different hill to die on. Quote, let the fleece of our fleets be fruitful. Let we be warm of thought. Let the paper money men and the gold bugs find their necks mud raked. I want this like I want a long weekend, a kiss in the dark bar, a slug's trace across some lichen. Quote, I want to make a leap that can't be turned from. In the rush of night, I run from. Within these desires is an ambition for a way of wanting that evades the market, for a mode of critique that cannot be capitalized on by that which it critiques, a way of wanting for which this world cannot set limits, a desire that creates not a job to work, but an obligation, an accountability to honor. Within these desires, there are two things not desired, or things for which the desire is a dissolution. Quote, I don't want to live as if living were a way of acquiring things, end quote. The refusal here, the turning away from life as accumulation, from shining hills on which to suffer, is also an active turning towards. Abolition is a presence, Ruthie Gilmore teaches us. To turn against organized abandonment and turn towards an abundance of care, to turn against prisons and towards the air. Quote, if I wish for more, it is not because I mean to tempt them to punishment. If I wish for more, it is not because I am impenetrable to air, end quote. I think this book, in rage and delight and despair, is always foremost in love. Warren asks, does loving this way prolong the war or the world or the people in it? And then later, what does it mean to love amid the terror? What has it ever meant? End quote. The answer isn't given explicitly, but is instead performed in the practice of the book, in its daily confrontations and devotions, its insistent and tireless questioning, its leaps and fleets and sticky fingers. I love this book. I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so excited to hear now from Alli Warren.
Thank you, Laura. It was very sweet and beautiful. Thank you to the Poetry Project for having me here, and for Jena for that really beautiful reading. It was awesome to hear you, Jena. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's funny to be here instead of in the parish hall and all gathered together in our bodies and space. And going out after for drinks and pizza and all those good New York things, but this is great too. So thank you for being here. I'm gonna read from this book, Little Hill, that Laura mentioned. It takes its name from the city of El Cerrito, which is where I live, on unceded Ohlone land, in a house that is on a street that dead ends at the base of that little hill of El Cerrito. I'm gonna read 3 poems from this book. And let's see. Movable Sea. It is in entering the street that I enter exchange, the loaded trees, the blooming thistle, the season of steal away in the middle of the muddle, quartz in pocket, hibernating rust. My boss reads insights from Google that will transform how you live and lead. My boss says, all hands on deck. I don't want to apply verbal bomb to accelerate the cogs. I don't want to put that mush in my mouth. Let the seas rise on the beachfront properties of the California coast, and the glass and the reverse white flight lofts explode. You can't eat, but you can't grow. Don't say milky white like that. What kind of fungus is this? Slow burning night at home with my self-disgust and honey wine hovering above the heaving. There is no autonomous habit. The nub is smaller than the love in it. The equinox is not the solstice. I'm just trying to coax you to the damp upper limit with my snout pressed against the tailpipe, diagnosing time with words as my coinage. Does I will always love you necessarily imply imminent abandonment? To change things by changing their names, to produce numbers and so produce norms. I hear them singing, "My love must be a kind of blind love." If you're treading in the chop, everything is a potential flotation device. Drugstore talisman, pop-up dust bowl, ghosts cheer from the dugout, spirits root in the shadows. I feel compelled to remain upright so I may be of some use rather than a reeking pit of pooled up resources. As soon as I start to speak, the crippling caving, unintentional day of silence, poached milkweed, lavender cupping. They say the way out is deeper in, but sometimes I want to run. When the dead are laid in common earth, if there be light, what the light might mean, what it designates versus what it legislates, embedded in things and not just in sex. I study the past to naturalize the present. Pink stucco shell, gooey rot center. Are mares really impregnated by wind? There is a clock ticking deep inside the bedrock. The door to hell has been burning continuously since the origin story. The threat is steely, latent, and inextricably linked to everyday violence, vigorously and unequally enforced. At the crosswalk, an assortment of self-satisfied men hoard clammy wads. A gloved hand extends from a tinted BMW and offers a brown banana. The disorder is individualized, a cloud-based living package of commercialized affects and capital functions, radiating out across the land like so many orange jumpsuits. You call it a god, I call it a menace. I've never been able to see the man who is his assumptive face, the obstinate gait, the cocksure street, as if I get a warm feeling when he says, "Good old boy state." He thinks we share a world, and my horror to the extent that we do. Where the cotton's fallow, its erector set suburbs and prisons, bloated early borders demand their champagne. I want to say the glass does not shatter, it unfurls. Not here or there, but in the mist. Our hero, the velvet river, our hero, the friend fetching another round. There is a possible future in a tender measure, an expanded geography of pleasure. The way out is across, in ardor. Let it burn bright in expanse of night. I hear them singing. I hold out my hand and my heart will be in it, singing, "The yam is the power that be." The sun it sinks upon the valley, the sun it sinks upon the hill, the dead electively present, conduit for all, the both and meadow, beautiful and bleeding. Lover of the gray, don't rest in forgetting. Demand a future equal to polemic. Call this immolation love. The bones remember. Gather around the legible bones. What will bring forth the topping? What kind of face do you want on your face? The blue breeze at Connie's Cantina or the having wept into your omelet at Rudy's can't fail. Every day I go to work. I mount my little saddle and pump the brakes, riding through the gated residential, smiling at the stench. Have you received your perk yet? Flogged unconscious. The present is a tradition. Horror was not made in a day, that's history. What of its slippages? What do bankers see when they leap from rooftops? Blinding light of a material day thrown across raked earth. Every phase of capitalism produces its own ideal body. J. Edgar Fuckface says, justice is merely incidental to law and order. Papas, don't let your kids grow up to be strong, silent types. The classroom, the workhouse, the patriarchal household, I prefer the whale's heft, buoyant in dark sea, to make of my breathing a fealty. The difference between what we want and what we want to want. When will I stop being called young lady? I note it now as a form of privilege and detriment, anticipatory shipping, delivery by drone, everything organized to deliver force on a routine basis. It's not that policy became any less racist, they just coded the rhetoric and called it colorblind. They execute the writs to keep the blood, cum, and milk out. Orders are phrased as questions and compliance interpreted as consent. Who is permitted unhindered breath? All I see is white lac flowing through coffers. I want to make a leap that can't be turned from in the rush of night I run from. I hear them singing, "Oh no, love, you're not alone. Let's conspire in the sweat bath. Let's do it beak to beak. Leave our pillows out to gather up the air among the glade." My responsibility is to others first, and from this I come to myself. Can power entrenched unequally be withdrawn by sheer force of individual will? No song alone can compel the maw to retreat. It's congealed in my romper and also in my phone. The festival is full of missionaries, traders, and government agents. There are so many men in this place. All fragrance ceases. Happy New Year. Total loss. Billy bends a quarter note and everybody sighs. I hear them singing, "Life is too short to have sorrow." Angela Davis wrote her autobiography at 28. I take my legs out to the edge of day and watch the commute make its slow way up the hill. One's dress, demeanor, movement through public space, companions. It's more expensive to go to work than to stay on the rolls. It's cheaper to be on probation than to pay for a monitor. I emerge ambulatory into the night with distended snout and jowls. If in his eyes I think I see contempt, is that paranoia or intuition? The disorder, global. Self-diagnosis, nearsighted. The way into some better measure might be underwater. An animal is accurate unto itself. My body clock rings in line with office time. I'm nostalgic for what I've not seen in the world. The rebellion was not spontaneous, or the consciousness of its actors was not. If we underestimate it, we will not be any closer to dismantling it. The function versus the particular one who embodies this function. As long as men have rights in women which women do not have in themselves. With the ruby red wedge for breakfast and the frosted flake pet nap for lunch, I lay into the fragrant air and kiss your little windows lid by lid. The wind rustles through elephant ear, kangaroo paw. I'm a fan of the amorous. I like the shapes of unwavering love all lined up in its costumes. The scrubs and berries and bitter sidewalk weeds of making do. I hope we can be buoyant together in the break. I hope we can be forked. Sebastopol. When I am in my fevers and frets, I go to the trees to sit befuddled at the base. Having never learned moderation, I want to keep the time that bougainvillea keeps. When nectar is scarce, to flit about the flowers like bees taught me. At that lap, I sit and sing, intentionally outnumbered. I learned that a fig is really an urn. The flowers of a fig tree cannot be seen. They are abundant, the urns, lurking about hedge strife while Duluth awaits its climate migrants. There's good food and drink to be had while the catastrophe rolls in. We're stocking up on jars. They'll find us under all the jars. How do you teach a dog to bark? You don't? I say hi to myself in the mirror, or is that not a mirror? The air is full, and you are not here. I put my hand through the oak. I use my fingers to make the object do what I want. I don't apologize because it is a machine, and I hate machines. I apologize to the bee I find near dead on the carpet and to the leaf I take down from its dancing string, but not to the machine. I follow the sunlight around the lawn with a ridiculous green plastic chair. A chair has its task and performs it well. What is mine? Listening? I didn't make a sound until I was 2.5. I have to work harder because I am dumb, with cause to wade into water. I'll take that shimmering over all the gold standards made by men. If obsolescence is inherent, do I soak and savor or fear and plan? Knowing it will die. This filling will die. The arbor is deafening. The wood is there to make hollow make sound. The gin is there so you taste the pepper. I get dressed so I can roam and sit under oak, but mostly I get dressed to go to work so I can eat and occasionally fill a tub with water and soak. The bankers do their different voices. Their hearts are blotted against those simply trying to make their way against death. They breach morning light, that most intimate light, with surges of work. I feast on plastic. Plastic tastes good. I think that sound is a horse, though I can't be sure. If I wear blue, the sea won't feel so vast. If I watch my step and open the gate and leave the yard, see how the animals move and the coloring. We try to be friends, though I have no tail. I ask the horse to come near. I ask the sun and the poplar after I learn its name. I am naive in the ruthless world among the goats. I try to predict your mood and fail. Having moved through so many moons, I come out the other side, return to the center, love. Should I be embarrassed to say it? In the evening, it is bird time, and I miss you, all of it. I don't make it very far in my short interpretation of travel without noticing you beside me there, like the stars are, plump, oblivious. If I wish for more, it is not because I mean to tempt them to punishment. If I wish for more, it is not because I am impenetrable to air. How big is that bird on the barn bush? How big is that bird on the bay laurel bough? The trees have eyes where they've been locked. I try to catch their gaze. I mean, I weep and whiff into the dirt, into the mincemeat. The thing I want most, a different hill to die on, thick and tall and radiant in the mountain of air when we kiss, bark against my back, as if someone opened the blinds and let the light stream in. There is gray-green and red-green and golden, light green and grass green and lichen green and moss green and the soot of the lemon tree, which Erica says needs iron. Does loving this way prolong the war or the world or the people in it? At the base of Marin County sits a prison, at the seat of all counties. It is because of the little ice age that we have the sound of violins. The ice age is music, ringing asunder in abundant air. With what is coming down the hatch, we'll have the sound of a new music, of a different density, ringing asunder to humanless heaven, a wide tongue clacking a clear bell under the ocean. A sapling threads to the gate to get to where the light is. I accord it sympathy. That's my snout in the feed bag in the afternoon. I have come here to sit on a box under a feed bag and measure time by the swarming of the worms. I've been outside the length of a working day and seen hundreds of leaves fall and what sound like seed pods, though I can't be sure. A current of air gradually gains on my skin. I walk to the temple and try to signal the horse, but it is sleeping and I am awake. I take dictation from the leaves. the little brown ones, but my favorite is the amber. This last poem is called Peck Box. When the sun goes down, the spirits come out. We huff on a pinwheel and say it spins of its own accord, rolling out the bins in saturated air, oiling the slop to ease extraction, accumulate, hoard, die, repeat. First, I thought salt was just salt. Then I got worse. First, I thought dirt is dirt, not matter out of place, not unimproved real estate. Under the fingernails, pooled in the pockmarks, the penal is never not pertinent. If dogs are buried like dogs, that is not at all. And if I don't want to be eaten, it is because I don't want to be turned into shit. Live from Little Hill, where the charred crib's aching for more sunlight, and this vat of beans hums the song of reproduction. Who manicures, who mops, who mucks up the air with guttural assumption? For every private matter, there is a failure of the collective, hastening our transformation into money. I poke at the oranges in my felt-tip tricorn. I push 2 fingers into the clammed-up root bulk. That right there is a punchable pasty. That right there is the moral arc of the universe trending towards dog shit. The border is built of insistence and repetition. The sea is a carpet under which we sweep the reeking. As fish do not live in the cities, the sun does not shine in a womb. Sometimes I stow in a scarred over lobe at a reposed past persuasion. The mountain is no obstacle if there's no notion to climb it. How many years has this bottle brush been burning, and how many more will it continue to drop red tendrils across the surface of the creaking earth? I notice when the light is lacking, blossom end rot, failure to thrive. How do you take your spritz? Evergreen bitters, debt-inducing anti-aging scrub. I take my eye wash in the cookhouse. The crow takes his charge to the street. You come to me agape, where palms spread their wings. I knew time to be a trap. As my blood slumbers, as my blood is not mine. One does not need a theory of navigation to know where they take the inflamed. Some of the species cultivate bulbs exclusively, assemble on a break in a canopy. One does not forbid something which no one wants to do or have done. I almost go so far as to say what I then say. Your departure evicts me from softest bed of bright dew, as postcoital sun streams through the blinds, another state-sponsored death. What does it mean to love amid the tear? What has it ever meant? Meet me in the dust, where plurality is a given grove. The firewall is porous, the claptrap a sieve. In the strained silence of the gone world, having some trouble with these swaddling blinders, I am practically swinging a pheasant in midday optimism. The deeper into the surf you go, the calmer it is. I remember Coach admonishing us to come alive, being struck by the beauty of that command, the breadth of its potential application. Yet my face is full of slop and I can't lift it. Are you in the industry? Fuck the self-entrepreneurial. Every cow deserves a palace. To live without predetermination, to watch the thick blue mist roll in, bobbing up the Yuba, breaking the will of the men with their racist stick and pokes, rock with the face of a face, rock with the mouth of a dog. We load onto granite slabs and thank the earth for reptilian repair. The mountain is no obstacle if there's no notion to climb it. The moon in its easements, the corn fat on its stalk, where light breaks, where subjects meet in confident prodigality, feasting and saying it is fasting, sliding in wingtips the whole way down the slippery pole of justice, a unity of the potentially killable, a gendered tear of the spectrum. My thesis survives not the smallest brush with leaving the house. My thesis, which is no thesis at all, that I live and breathe and you do too. The truth recurs, though its vestments may be novel. More officers arrive, but none attempt aid. In the woundable body, the primordial call, phoning just to breathe into the receiver. I answer because I was already answerable, not because you look like me. I want autonomy based in relation, affluence without abundance, having no word for this because I have no concept, wrapped at the effusive crack, lapping up the overrunneth. Where does the honey hide? What are the habits of a creature thrown from safety from the first? The neonate comes under renewed attention. The future comes of its own propulsion. Every time we step on that stone, it rocks. Hold me at the radiant fork where clams split open, where sprouts spring miraculously to life. Bernadette says everything must be free. It's no wonder that sing and sign are sisters. The metal in the moon, older than that. I guess I was driven through that tree, though I don't remember. I guess my brother and sister were too. For me, the dead are in my body. That's where heaven is. A swollen seed coat among the boughs. I come and call you a flower. Shattered body, reclaim your life. Deem the norm the tear. Thanks, y'all.
Alli, thank you so much. That was astonishing. I love both of these books so much, and the chance to get to hear you read from them tonight was really just like such a profound and deep pleasure. And Juliana's introduction also was just amazing. Thank you so much for that. And for anyone who missed it, Juliana gave a really amazing reading here a couple of weeks ago that's up on YouTube now. I'm going to make it so you all can unmute yourselves as you'd like. We can have like 5-10 minutes to hang out and chat. Thank you again so much for being here. I hope to see you back at the Poetry Project soon. Thanks.